are soul modest and women are body modest. And we talked about this behind the bedroom door. We women are very concerned about covering our bodies. And we have to learn in a marital relationship to share our bodies with our husband. But in the same way, our husbands are so modest, and they don't like to strip, if you will, and reveal their inner emotions to you. It's as alien to them as it would be for you to uncover your body. So you need to be tender and gentle and kind with your husband. Remember, this verbal sharing, especially of emotions, is not part of his God-given nature. It is extremely difficult for him, and you need to be aware of that. Now, I realize some of you are married to men who are more verbal than others, and they talk a lot. But usually those men talk about things that have happened or things they've observed. They are still not sharing deep emotional feelings. For the average man, that is extremely difficult. And if you are going to be a priest in your home, if you are going to serve the Lord in a discerning and a fitting way, you need to be so gentle with your husband. Do not back him in a corner and yell at him. Why don't you ever share? Why can't you talk with me? You're wounding him. You're hurting him deeply. He doesn't have the tools. God didn't make him like you. And you need to be wise women of God. All right, the next difference between men and women that you need to be aware of is that on average, men are more logical and women are more emotional. Now, like I said, when we started this, you obviously need to apply this to your husband, but you can apply these principles to your sons, to your grandsons, to your friends, neighbors, boss, whoever. These apply to all men. And we need to be wise women as we deal with the men in our life. All right, men are more logical. Because of that, a man may seem to be cruel and insensitive because he sees just the logic. He doesn't have all the emotional input that we have as women. And I think this one area causes so much problem, especially with the children, because he sees, this is what needs to happen. Here's the logic of what's happened. Here's what we need to do. And of course, we women are so emotional. Well, you might hurt his feelings, and what will she do if you approach her that way? And oh my goodness, and we get so terribly upset at our men. There's a wonderful illustration of this principle in the Word of God. It's found, we don't have time to go into it this morning, but if you'd like to read about it, it's in 2 Samuel chapter 12, starting about verse 15 and following. And it's the story of David after Bathsheba had that first child. And you know the story. The prophet comes to him, and the child is taken away from David. And while that child was ill, David fasted and prayed and threw himself on his face before the Lord. But when that child died, David got up, cleansed himself, sat down and ate, and then went into the temple to praise God. And everybody watching him, his servants, and are all amazed at his reaction. And David's famous response is, very logical. He's gone. I can't bring him back. I'll see him one day, but he will never come back to me. Logical. And that is a perfect illustration of a typical man's thought processes. And this is also an important difference that men have in grieving. They see the logic, and they are not as emotional as we are. So understand your man. Then there's another important difference which kind of ties in with this one, and that is men are bottom line. They see the bottom line. David saw the bottom line. That child was dead. He wasn't coming back. That was the bottom line. Women, on the other hand, love details. We can so easily get enmeshed in so many details. And this principle especially, knowing this difference between men and women, is so key in communicating with your husband. Because your husband doesn't need a lot of details. If your husband asks you, for example, to make him a doctor's appointment, say he left this morning and he said, honey, would you make me a doctor's appointment? And he comes back this evening and he says, okay, when's my doctor's appointment? And you start in. Oh, honey, you wouldn't believe I called that receptionist. I must have had to call her 5 or 6 times. She kept hanging up on me, and then when I finally got a hold of her, would you believe she's in the middle of a divorce? And he's just going, oh. You've lost him. Men's brains, and here I am not trying to be funny, ladies, men's brains literally cannot take the volume of details that we throw at them. So, let me give you a helpful hint. When he walks in that door, you tell him, honey, your appointment is next Monday at 4 p.m. And then you can tell him all the details. And he will kind of listen. At least he'll stand there and go, That is so key in communicating, because you don't communicate unless the other person can hear you. He cannot hear you if he gets lost in this bog of information and details. Another important difference between men and women, I love this one. Men solve problems. Women share problems. Oh, this one can cause a lot of fights. For example, you get in a little tiff with your mom on the phone, and he walks in the middle of it and says, what's wrong, honey? And you tell him, oh, you wouldn't believe what my mother said and how she hurt my feelings. And he looks at you and says, that's fine. You are never to call her again. Now, that's not what you had in mind. But he is solving the problem. Don't put him in that position if you don't want the problem solved, because he's going to solve it. God has made him a problem solver. So, either practice the ministry of shut up and zip it, or go to your husband and say, honey, would you just please listen to me? I just need to vent, and I don't need you to be Mr. Fix-It right now. Just listen. And he can understand that. But you have to be upfront with it, because God made a man to want to solve problems. Okay? So those are some wonderful differences that we need to know if we're going to be that priest in our home. So how do you communicate with a man, a husband specifically, but any man? First of all, not as much. Ladies, our culture has brainwashed us into thinking that communication is the total answer to every problem. Communication is good, but we need to know how to do it correctly. And we need to know when it's too much communication. We need to respect our men's need not to talk. Did you know your man has that kind of need? There are times he comes home and he's had a hard day. And he really would just like some peace and quiet. And he would like not to talk. If your husband is in especially a profession where all he does all day is talk, he may so enjoy coming home and not talking. So that leads us to number 2 here. You find other outlets. Do your husband a favor, honey. Get a girlfriend. Because we women love to talk. God made us that way. That's okay. But find a girlfriend. Talk to your mother. Talk to your girlfriend. Have outlets where you can use that bursting bunch of words that it's just trying to gush out of your mouth. You know, when your husband walks in the door, some of you, especially with young children, and I so remember these days where you've gone all day and you haven't talked to anybody over the age of 2, and you are just, whoom, you jump on that poor guy because you haven't had any adult conversation. So understand, but it's your job to find that adult conversation. You start making friends. You know, ladies, this is one of the reasons, very honestly, that we have Titus 2 groups, is so that you can make connections with other women who are like-minded, who can encourage you in the Titus 2 principles and can be there for you because they understand your need to talk. All right, then try different approaches in communication. If this is a real issue in your marriage, you need to try some different things. And we want to give you some different things to try, because for most men, the 5 most dreaded words in the English language are these. Honey, we need to talk. And most men turn pale at the very thought of talking, because that means we're going to sit them down and we're going to talk and talk and talk, and they feel like, oh my goodness, I'll never get away from this woman. So, ladies, I am here to save the day. Because I have a little mechanical device that may very well save your marriage. It's called a timer. You take this little puppy and you tell your husband after you've said, honey, we need to talk, and you tell him, I'm going to talk for 15 minutes. That's it. When this rings, I shut up. Oh, hope will return to his eyes as he knows there will be an end. I'm not kidding, ladies. This is important. So get one of these. They're very inexpensive, and it may be the best investment that you have ever made. Then, another approach that you can use is this one. And I've been using this one recently, and I've been having really great success with it. Our men think in boxes. Have you ever asked a man what he's thinking, and he's told you, nothing? Well, for a man, that's true. He can think nothing. So, a man thinks in these individualized boxes. Women are all interconnected. We think about something, and that leads us to something else, and that leads us to something else, and it's all interconnected. But a man has a nothing box. He has a work box. He has a wife box. He has a kid box. He probably has a sports box, whatever sports he plays. My husband loves golf, so he has a golf box. So now, when I'm with my husband, I ask him, honey, are you in your nothing box? And sometimes he'll say, yeah, in my nothing box. In fact, one day, he took me on a tour of his nothing box, and he described what it looked like. And it was wood paneled, but it didn't have anything in it, but it had all these fancy things. But if he says, no, I'm in my job box, then I know, oh, okay, well, we can talk about that. So find out what box your husband is in, and if he's in his nothing box, leave him alone. He needs quiet. He needs to be left alone. You know, ladies, we can improve our communication by our respectful attitudes, our respectful tone of voice, and if necessary, a respectful reminder. It's not that we can't ever say anything, but we need to do it with immense respect, and then listen to his reply. Because as women, we are already figuring out what we're going to say next, or we think we know what he's going to say. So minister to your husband in these ways. Another tool that will help you as you are the priest in your home, as the wife, is to understand basic personality types. Now, we're applying these to our men today, but you can apply these personality types to yourself. You can apply these personality types to your children, etc., your friends, whoever. It's a wonderful, useful tool. And here, let me preface it. We're going to be talking about 4 different personality types. Some people are mostly one type, but many people are a mix, maybe a 20-80, maybe a 40-60, maybe even a 50-50 mix. So this is a useful tool for seeing where a personality would fit into these different types. So let's go through these. First of all is Mr. Popular. There are different, some of you may have studied these personality types by animal names or other different names. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. Mr. Popular. First of all, on the positive side, Mr. Popular is fun. He's outgoing. He's the life of the party. He initiates conversations wherever he goes. On the negative side, Mr. Popular is disorganized, emotional, and he's hypersensitive to how others view him. Each personality type has strengths and weaknesses. Each personality type, you are drawn to their strengths, but you are repelled by their weaknesses. And what happens is we marry based on the strengths, and we argue the next 30 years based on their weaknesses. We need to understand our men's strengths and weaknesses and then be praying for them and understanding, and we'll talk about our approach later. Mr. Perfect. On the plus side, Mr. Perfect is deep, thoughtful, introspective, serious, and perfectionistic. On the negative side, Mr. Perfect is critical and pessimistic. He's very moody, can get down in the dumps, depressed very easily. Mr. Powerful, the next personality. On the plus side, this man is a natural-born leader. He is self-disciplined and dynamic.